Hi, everybody. We have a question from Rachel in Manchester. And our question is, on your UK tour, you mentioned that currently the focus is on opening the throat center. What is the overall purpose and outcome of the throat center, the throat chakra opening at this time? Presuming, of course, it's not just to keep me distracted on my mobile and enthrall a Facebook. I'm not sure if the two are connected, but nonetheless, maybe it's possible. Well, it's an interesting thing. Actually, this has been going on for a number of thousands of years, especially in India, where the focus has been, in yoga especially, on the throat center, especially, you know, when everybody is doing this in yoga and they're trying to meditate, and it becomes very stilted almost. This is the position for meditation. Of course, in Buddhism, it's the middle finger because they were working on the solar plexus. This finger was the throat center, this throat center. And the focus was on the body because all of the postures were related to trying to get the etheric body opening in different areas along the spine line. And so what you're dealing with there is another concept that relates to the root and the gonad center. The gonad center, of course, is the center. The throat is like the alter ego of the gonad center. Really, what you're basically doing there, and in our way of seeing things, is bringing the root center, root gonad centers, and the throat center together, but leaving a gap in between so that the energy can jump the gap, and therefore the hands bump open differently than they would normally, and it throws the throat center home a little bit more. And the reason for that is ultimately it does two things, well, a number of things. One thing is it brings the intensity of the gonad center upward through the emotional disposition. And the emotional dispositional center has been kind of the focal point between those first three levels, the root, the gonad, and the solar plexus. And they call it the hara, and a lot of other names, and other organizations, other places call it. Simply the collection point, like Carlos Castaneda talked it, or the place where you bring a balance to your personality, because your personality is made up of energy. And what you do is you engage with life, and the energy is bent and curved and straight-lined all around you. And basically, these are habitual movements that enable you to be consistent in movement and motivation, relatively speaking. And you look to other people the same way as you did 20, 35 years ago, simply because you have cultivated an image and you've remained that way. And in the old traditions, you tried to get away from that. Well, that hasn't worked. So really, basically, what you can do in your relationship with having other centers open above the diaphragm is begin to bring the mind to bear. The intellect that's aligned with the emotional disposition also has within it a mental facility. And that mental facility is kind of on the bare bones level, the early levels of development in the individual's personality. But the personality is capable of traveling anywhere within the realm of its capacity. So it can travel into a level beyond the intellect and engage with a kind of watching of the personality, and then kind of trying to understand the value of how you function. Well, some things that you do are really very helpful, and other things are not so helpful. So you attempt to do that the best you can. Do that meaning observe what's going on within you, and then try to soften down or adjust the way you function to some degree so that you can be in kind of a way, find a different balance in your personality's orientation. Or, say it a different way, as the energy is cultivated in your personality, you make small adjustments based on how you noted or note how you function. How you note how you function. So what's that got to do with the throat center? Well, the throat center is kind of a place where there is a phasal shift. First of all, the gonad center coming up into the throat center is still self-focused. It opens you up a little bit in the mind because it affects the brow center. Although most of us, anyone who's been very active with the brow's already started to open through the concentration of an individual as they relate to whatever it is they study or are studied. And when the two are coming together, they kind of build a little bridge together and try to cultivate an internal perspective that is slightly different than how the organized, egocentric individual, everybody, is settled in a certain way. And you start to look at how you function from a different perspective, not negating it. Negating is not the answer. If you negate, you construct a system that is negative. It doesn't help. You come down on you, or you, because you're nervous about coming down on yourself, you cultivate a kind of a lifting yourself up so that you can say, oh, well, I'm not going down on myself. I'm kind of lifting myself up, well, kind of, because I'm really able at this and that and that. Yeah. So you're caught in between two areas that are very difficult for you. But the throat center is really, really interesting because as the brow and the throat work together, it cultivates two other aspects for sure. It begins to stimulate the crown center to come on a little bit more, and definitely stimulates the heart center to come on a little bit more. And the initial heart coming on is very much involved with what people call empathy, but it's very sympathetic empathy. You can say, well, that's good. Yeah, and it is good. However, when you engage with a personality with a sympathetic, empathetic orientation, you can see a lot of good stuff there, but you can also align still with the relationship, with your personality, and say, well, you can become fairly judgmental, empathetically judgmental, of course, not negative, empathetically judgmental. In other words, you're really trying to be helpful. Not necessarily that helpful, but nonetheless you can be. And a deeper level of engagement is you notice yourself watching the whole scenario between one or two people, and you notice that you're watching it as if you're involved with it, but not involved with it at the same time. You're not seeking to validate either person. You're not seeking to validate yourself or the other person. You're looking at how you function in that dialogue. Dialogue is when two people get together, right? But not necessarily are you looking to align with how you do things or how they do things. You just happen to notice this is how the patterns are. You see your pattern, you see their pattern. And you wonder why these patterns don't mix all the time. And you notice why they don't mix. Because the two patterns are tending to defend their relationship with themselves. The patterns are. The individual is not knowledgeable or perceptive about those two patterns functioning. As the throat center comes on, it allows you to see it better and also to note that that's just the pattern. Well, the communication to the solar plexus immediately when you say that's just the pattern is quite hair-raising. It immediately wants the personality to defend from the individual who's saying, and by the way, that's you, who's saying that's just a pattern. It starts to engage because its job has always been to protect and maintain a pattern that seems to be very significant in the survival of the individual. And here you have the individual currently saying, I think that's just a pattern, and I'm not so sure I need to use it the way it's being used currently. Well, the solar plexus and its accoutrements, its friends, the root and the gonad center, or the brow center that's been on in conjunction with that emotional dispositional structure, the intellect, it says, no, you don't understand. What I know is what I know. What I don't know, who cares? But what I know is what I know, and that's what I know. It's reacting about survival of what's already there. The individual with the throat center functioning in a broader manner is then able to note what's going on in the lower center, where the balance points are, and it's trying to calm down so this structure doesn't come on more and shove energy up into the mind again, or the intellectual orientation, so it can get back into and away from, into the process of self-protection, and away from this business of noting how the patterns fit and how they don't fit. Throat center then becomes extremely important, but that's not the main reason. Granted, I said it opens another aspect of the heart center, and that's one aspect of really being important, because that aspect becomes a truth center. Soon as it's on, no matter whether you can perceive it or not, you have this little thing in the back of your head that says, that's baloney. That's not really the way it is. But it says it about other people, and it says it about you. It would be better if it only said it about other people. And it's not the same as the emotional dispositional structure defending against the onslaught of anyone else's idea that doesn't agree with you. It's not the same as that. It's kind of just there, and you note it, and it's gone, because you noted it already. It doesn't have to stay there. The emotional dispositional structure has to stay there. It has to defend consistently. And the intensity builds in that structure, as opposed to softening down and getting you to wonder what that was all about. Well, that's not the end of it, because the throat center stimulates a whole series of centers behind the neck and moves up, can move straight up over your head, way up about 2.5 feet. It can move around and engage stronger. It comes in quite a distance out and then cuts in like this. But what it does is, it is the rudimentary early stimulation of an increase of brow into a territory that is off the etheric body and not necessarily aligned with the emotional dispositional structure of the etheric body and the lower emotional system. Because all of these systems have many levels. So when it has a kind of a little trough that it's building like this, eventually you can engage with a different level of mind and a different level of energy coming into the brow, as well as ultimately being stimulated through the brow. And if that was the only thing that was important, then you could say, well, the throat center, yeah, well, okay, it comes on, it comes on. No, that's not it. That's not the whole thing. As that throat center comes on stronger and blends around the shoulder area and blends around the back and upward, it turns two centers on through here, which opens the heart center in a different way, the neck center in a different way, the behind the head in a different way, and atop the head in a different manner. It begins to link you with another level. And that other level is profound. The links are related to the mouth, the mind, the higher levels. And at that level, your system is being teased or trained physically, emotionally, and intellectually into functioning as an individual that could be really helpful at a soul level to be helpful to others. The link-ups with previous lifetimes get a little stronger where you have been capable before, but that's not the end of it. So, at that particular point, these three head centers, the neck area, the brow, and the crown, are coming together just like these three centers came together before in your engagement with survival. They begin to come together, and you begin to look into a different level for answers. The answers start coming in a little bit more than they could come in before. And that's the real reason for the throat center to be developed into different stages of itself. So there can be an expression through the vocal cords of higher planes, even though the system here is being used. So you finally get to the point where you begin to understand there is a link up between higher planes and these planes through the development of these chakras or Sephiroth or centers or fireballs, whatever you want to call them. What you call them is a lot less important than their functioning. And when you begin to have that happen, other things begin to happen. Well, the whole system off the body can begin to open. The whole system off the body can begin to open. All the way through in the back, all the way through in the front, all the way up. And energy can come in from a very much higher plane. And that higher plane then is a plane that can transmit energy into this plane and try to help the whole of our system to begin to change. Sounds a little science fiction-y, but nonetheless, that's how it tends to be. That's one of the reasons why the ancient sages worked with this throat center constantly. They knew it was a pathway into the heart. They knew it was a pathway into the crown. They knew it was a pathway into the brow. And they knew it was an engaging structure because these lower systems have to broaden out to be able to handle these things. Just because you can have more energy come in, you still have to handle it as a personality. Because the intensity of these structures that you've been involved with all of your life tend to take a little bit more juice than you think they can take, and then they might say something like, oh, that's a lot more juice than I thought I could take. This kind of thing. So there's a little bit of personal upheaval that goes on there that could be softened really quickly by allowing yourself not necessarily to be low or high in our engagement, just capable. And truly just capable means willing to allow yourself to be that which you are desperately afraid of being and desperately want. And that's a so-called spiritual being, whatever that may be. Because truly, even though a lot's been written, we do not actually know what that would be until we taste it, until we're involved in it. And then we have thousands of questions that have to be answered internally, which, by the way, are not easily answered externally. I'm doing my best with this throat center, as you can see. I'm trying to make sure that I'm dotting an I and a T there, and I don't want to mess up. And is that the way it works? Yeah, it seems to be the way it works. And I'm not. I would say also that we have a whole crown center to develop. It's not the fundamental things like you see 3 levels on the Buddhas, some of the icons that we have, and you see the same thing with Shiva, 1 and 2 and 3 levels, and energy shooting up like this, and you don't know what that is. These are metaphorical systems that are really profoundly valuable because they're real. They're real in a kind of way that relates to energy. Energy pouring in, energy pouring out. And these are icons that show us that there is a distinct possibility that could occur in the realm of normal. So if you're actually involved with having your throat center open, learning how to calm down in those circumstances are extremely valuable. But you will find that you will intensify. And you will do your best to deal with it, and you'll probably be able to blame, if you have a partner, you can blame them. If you have no partner, you'll have to get a dog or cat to kick around. Oh, sorry, to engage with. Or you'll have to find some way to feel relatively, interestingly, similar to your methodology or patterns. And that means some way of finding out, unconsciously, how your patterns are, so you don't have to negate them. They're set out there so you can see them and help them. You are treated as a spiritual being. You begin to be treated like a normal, adult human being. This is really something we're not used to. Oh, sorry, did I say that out loud? Okay, we don't really know what a normal human being is simply because we are all competing with each other for how we know things should be, even if we're not like that. Or when you come up with some idea and others may say, oh no, it can't be like that, it has to be like this because I read this book or I read that. Don't negate the books. Don't negate your experience. Continue. You're only, if you have an experience, you're just beginning. If you have another experience and it sounds really spiritual, it's because you're just beginning. When those experiences happen, they're there for a reason. Tuck them away. They may come in handy one day, but it doesn't make you any more spiritual. Did everybody hear that? It does not make you any more spiritual. Neither does it make you any less, any more menial, or if you don't get them. That's just pattern. And that's some of the dictates that have been interestingly offered for your approval as you steal them from other people. And the best ones that work for you are the ones that you will settle with. Unfortunately, in spiritual growth, there is a continuance with respect to settling. Once you settle, movement occurs, trying to get you to move and broaden, move and broaden, move and broaden, move and broaden. At the same time, because of a broadening of the throat center, isn't it fun? More energy goes to the gonad center. More energy goes to the root center. More energy goes to the solar plexus. I can say that in a different way. And you as a personality have to make some sense out of this in a more balanced manner than you have already allowed yourself to do, which is only kind of growing. It's called growing. You can call it whatever you want. Shrink material as opposed to shrink material. It might make you nervous. Whatever you do when you get nervous, you will do more of. Whatever you do when you're a little bit annoyed and don't have a reason, you find them. There are enough reasons in this universe for you to be annoyed. Believe you me, it's set up for many more million people than we have. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we might get them. However, the throat center may be able to help you if your focus is off the will center, emotional will center, into a movement towards wondering why, and being curious and not attempting to negate some answer you may come up with. Get rid of all the answers. Get them, find them wherever they are in you. And after that, look for the next one. Go beyond the answers that you have. That's where the real answers are. And when you're finished understanding those new ones, go beyond them and new answers will be there. That is an aspect of the complexity of the throat center. And it is a tremendous complex center, but it does make the personality hyper a bit. And it does that because, once again, it's trying to get you to notice and note your particular version of the flair that you must use to engage with life and completely defend yourself against all that might come without even having anything come. Kind of like that. Did you have a... Yeah.
I did. If you're in an interaction with somebody,
Yeah.
and you're noticing inside, you're noticing the patterns playing out.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like it would be okay if you could keep your mouth shut, but if you're in the midst of an interaction, you need to speak, and it seems like I can't get in sync. What I'm noticing inside, when I speak, what comes out of my mouth is just more of the same.
Okay. Now, hang it right there for a second. What you can have inside your mind can be an aspect of observing. What you have coming out of your mouth is the alignments that you have with your engagement, with your emotional disposition, which is the ruler often of your personality. Also, your mental structure that often unknowingly aligns with your emotional dispositional structure because it defends positionally the territory you happen to be in at the time. That's usually in your own skin. Now, I've noticed this in corporations that I've been involved with. Competition is tremendously strong, not to help the company, to be recognized by the company. And I always was surprised about that. And I asked that question to a person one time, and he said, it was a vice president, and he said, "You looked at me as if I was a bit daft." And he said, "Do you not know that everybody thinks they're in a war, and they want to be the hero of that war?" Well, he was an extra special fighter pilot in World War II. So he was actually a hero in the United States, and he was working with his company in Canada. And he said, people are often like that. They feel as if they haven't made their mark in life. So they have to battle everybody to make some scratch on something, some material, some position that nobody's going to notice. But they're going to believe everybody's noticing it. And the noticing will only last as long as someone notices. I said, that's a weird thing to say. That seems to be logical. He said, no, I think it's going to last forever. And name will be etched in a history book. And if it's not, they haven't succeeded somewhere. Truth is, it's not true. You do what you do, actually, to engage with you, to learn about you. Whereas you think you do what you do so others will recognize you. Why didn't you get told this when we were kids? Oh, all of you probably did. Right? It's probably at the dinner table when you were 3 and you were told this is what it's all about. And, but it never got spoken about. Issue is, it increases the volume of the gonad center, personal, emotional will. Very strong. Nothing negative about that. You need that to survive. And then when this throat center comes on, and there's a charge upward. Remember, if there's a charge upward, there's a charge downward. This is difficult because people don't really talk about this. Too bad. If you have an open center, a center that opens freshly, and you have energy flowing through you, that affects the lower ones. You have to reconstruct for that moment, and for whatever moments you're okay with doing that, reconstruct a formula within you that will use the old ones and also add different things to it so that you can find a way of balancing out your engagement with existence. And that means within you. Usually people become successful in business and they become so proud of themselves, or spiritually, you have an experience, you become proud of yourself. And you go into hard listening. In other words, you cannot hear anything because all you hear is you telling you how important. Oh, let me comb my hair. Yes, I am. I'm really quite. You don't do it like that. That would be obvious. You do it in your own way. You might put people down. You might negate the way they engage. You might, before they can do anything, and tell them that that's however they're doing things isn't the right way because so-and-so said it was like this, therefore it must be like that. I'm sorry. The rules and regulations of spiritual growth are universal. They're not dependent on our rules and regulations. Everyone is different. And those rules and regulations have one thing in mind only: how to move from this position to that position and still maintain a balance within. And then move again, maintaining, or at least attempting to cultivate a balance within. Move again, cultivate a balance within. Move again, cultivate a balance. Move again, cultivate a balance within. This happens over years, or may happen over lifetimes, as many people have told me that I've known. So it's different. So the engagement with the mouth currently is literally intellectually and emotional. Intellectual on a level that is really has a lot of confinement as it relates to validating a position and place relating to the emotional disposition. That is about an engagement with survival of an image that is necessary to have to survive in life. So you can't hear anything negative about that at all. If you have opportunities given to you in life, do the best you possibly can with them. Learn from them. Learn the best you possibly can. I have a friend who's going to retire, and I said, wow, what an opportunity. They're probably going to write books. They're probably going to engage with more lecturing. They're probably going to, what an opportunity to help people. Not to elevate your position in place, to help people. Could you elevate your position in place? Yeah, sure. But when you die, who's going to know? Within a very short period of time, you will not be remembered. People are too busy getting on with this position and place thing. Personally, individually. And you're no longer here to help. Therefore, you must not be here. Or you may look at, oh, well, that person will always help me because I knew them. That's another way of looking at it. Astral form is always in the astral plane. And if they had a mental facility, that mental facility is still in the astral plane. This particular form, kind of in a way, chakra-oriented at least, is in the astral plane. The highest levels, there are highest levels in this astral plane. Well, there are many lower levels in it. Personality sits pretty close to the bottom. So your capacity as an individual of being capable in the astral plane is fairly close to the bottom. You will think it's very high, and you'll mess with people. That will not help you. Learning how to back up is very, very powerful. Learning how to engage and understand that the need is to be helpful, not to be important in any plane. That's kind of the key thing. The throat center ultimately helps this. The engagement prior to the helping all the time based on what you think you should be doing, initially is involved with the gonad center. So you involve yourself with the gonad center until you notice that the throat center is interfering and the mind is interfering and you're having second thoughts about things. Not about things you've done necessarily, but you can. It's part of our whole shtick. But maybe just about how you do things so that you might adjust something. You're finding a middle ground that's different than the one that you had. That's related to the throat center. That's why it's so important. Devaluation, related to here, the root center, and a little positional stuff in relationship to what should be. Has anybody ever done that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have, so you guys are all way ahead.
So the perceiving of the pattern is a bit of this, and
Yeah.
then the speaking, is it rushing back down? Like it's the energy going back
Well,
into...
it gets it into, it's an interesting thing. You bring up an interesting point. I'm not sure if you meant this or not, but as you're opening, it stimulates the lower system, which is the major motivator of the personality, but it includes the brow. It can include the chest. But in the early stages of its opening, I'm comparing that to tremendously able beings. But we would say, well, if they're open, we must be great. If they're open, you're in for a ride. And the ride is how to find a balance in there, how to deal with you. And the dilemma is that higher level will shove energy in you to show you how you are, and you'll be the only blind person on the street. That won't be negative. That will just be natural position, place, defense. Nothing negative there. That's what happens when you start to grow. Oh yes, also with the implementation of noticing, you begin to step away from that a little bit, and you start to create new habitual processes internally that allow you to step away often, but it's still in there from time to time. It's harder to see. The deeper you grow, the harder it is to see. Oh yeah, but also the more you help to see it by the implementation of higher energy. Okay? And that's looking at it from an energetic point of view, as opposed to the concept of this chakra means this and that means that and that's me. And that's, as soon as you reach those, that's only the way you are. That does not work. It's not like that. But there is a help from these higher centers that helps you to engage and make some adjustments internally, especially if it's mixed with meditation. Very valuable tool. Is that making some sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Anybody else? Yes?
So, just to clarify what I'm hearing is, it sounds to me that what you're saying is,
Yeah.
there's less of a focus on, like when you're trying to find a balance after
Yeah.
having heard something or recognized something in yourself, and you're
Yeah.
trying to find that balance
Yeah.
place,
Mhm.
it's less on assessing whether you are doing, how you're doing in relationship to
Yeah.
the balance.
Whether you're good or bad,
With
or
your-
right or wrong
right, but-
in it.
But more about just noticing that you can notice.
There's a notation.
And that your thought, that your thoughts, your words, your assessment of it is just a passing thing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And interesting, for those of you who have already noted that you're learning how to perceive if you're calm, reasonably calm, you learn how to calm down under those circumstances the best you can. And it will be, I mentioned hard listening. In other words, you'll be listening in relationship to your personality and the protection of it. Softer listening is engaging with, watching what's going on inside, listening outside, and trying to see the pattern, not only with others, in you, and not negating. That's soft.
That's the part that I don't do so well with.
Well, it's because you've been practicing other things. And that doesn't mean you're bad. Anyone not practiced being validated by how right you are? By how right you are? Yeah. Everybody has done this thing. So, be okay with it, but you don't have to agree with it all the time. And that starts you on the pathway. If you don't agree with how you function all the time, make small adjustments. The action of making a small adjustment is the bringing to bear of energy that is different than what has been previously there in the personality. Because you depend on that unconsciously to be functional quickly. Fair? Small adjustments gives you options. An option will appear in your head, and you'll say, because of the throat center, will appear in your head, and you will say, oh, I have an option here. That's provided you can perceive it. It may take about 150,000 times before you see it. I'm joking. Only 150 times. But you haven't thought that something was there, and you just missed it. Or you catch it and you say, well, I'm not going to do that, I'm right. Well, that is still an engagement with a movement towards moving into a different place, a different balance point, so to speak. Different place of engagement that will help you to become more perceptive. If you are more perceptive, you know you can redirect those energies. You'll know the gonad center will come on. Yours did about when you were talking about that thing, it went bang, came right on, because that's survival. Nothing negative about it. You could redirect it straight up behind your back and out the throat, and if you want it, back out behind the neck, around and into the brow. And if you do that, it softens down the distinct pattern that relates directly to how to survive the onslaught of another way of looking at things. And there's no onslaught. But if it's there, surely it must be an onslaught.
Yeah.
But there's no onslaught. It's just another option. Does that make some sense, Bronwyn? Yeah, Jean?
But the onslaught
The sense of the
that's
onslaught.
currently going on is our defensive response in our normal system. That makes it feel like an onslaught.
Well, it feels like an onslaught because you're reacting to something that is different than how you might engage reflexively,
Yes.
unconsciously. That's why it feels like an emotional onslaught, but it's not. It's not there.
And yeah, you were trying to say on the weekend that it isn't a threat, but we perceive it as a threat.
It's a perceived threat.
Yeah.
It isn't as real as what. Now, mind you, there are circumstances that maybe there is a threat of some kind. You may, for example, say something, and it comes out different than how you normally think. That would be a threat. That would be a threat to you and how you normally function.
So the onslaught actually can feel stronger as you're doing the other thing more.
Yes, it can. Soften it down. So, soft listening. You could only perceive that because you're softening yourself down. And you can perceive it and say, ah, I got it. I got it is very valuable. Much more important than being right or wrong. That's not that important. Only important to keep the image of being right or wrong when it's necessary to make you feel better.
I don't think there's too much chance of losing that.
Well, now, you joke, and remember somewhat about Freud saying about jokes. Sometimes you cover a whole bunch of stuff with joking because it makes you feel better, but the difficulty is when you're joking about something, something's actually happening. Something's actually happening. That's why you have to get a comic relief. And I say, have a lot. Because humor is one way of dispelling the need to be functionally set in a particular negating fashion, which all that does is stiffens up the unconscious reflex that maintains a protective response, and that makes you wonder about, see, there's that thing again. That's what happened.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to happen
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
And now what you're doing
See,
is you're
now
not
I'm
only,
right.
now you're really patting it. And you're giving it a little kiss. And a lick. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, that's what dogs do, right?
No, and case mice too.
Good
Mice,
lickers and
yeah.
bad lickers.
Well, that's the way touching and soothing, right? That's kindness. Touching and soothing is part of a kindness. Don't touch me if you're really upset or intense. But I mean, other than that, we all look for a tiny little bit of that. And then there's a small little voice in the background that says, and someone moves slowly towards you like that, and you begin to play May I.
Yeah,
You didn't say May I.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's only if you're a little intense in following the pattern, because your concentration is so necessary to follow the normal patterns you normally engage with, whatever they may be,
No,
and whatever they
we
may
don't need
not be.
concentration to do that.
Well, you're quick, but you need the concentration to see them.
Oh, to see them,
Yeah, for
not
sure.
to do them.
Anybody else?
Well,
Oh, sorry, did I not get?
no, that's okay.
Oh.
This might not make any sense,
Okay.
but I'm circling around again.
This
to-
is Natalie, in case it doesn't make
Oh,
any
okay.
sense.
Hi.
Yeah.
Another part of that question was that sometimes I've noticed the boomerang of I'm watching something, I'm seeing a pattern, and I judge it, and so I speak in a reaction. But I've also noticed sometimes that it only seems possible to be observing and paying attention when I'm not talking. And then as soon as I try to interact, then it comes out in the same framework
It's
as
a
it
format.
always. But the problem is, it's like that seems to lock into a personality mode, even if I don't want to be there.
Okay, that's fine.
So is
Then
that anything?
what
like
I would say is it's a format. So you're on the way to adjusting this. So during the adjustment period, 400,000 years, wherever it might be, 2 years, 1 year, whatever, you must defend the format by expressing it. Unconsciously,
Unconscious, okay.
not consciously. It
I
comes
just
up.
don't understand that.
Okay. Well,
No, I mean, I don't understand why that wants to continue to happen when I don't even like it.
well, because it is a survival methodology. Why would you want to get rid of going like this if you have a spear in your hand and there are bears and other things
Lions and
around?
tigers.
Lions and tigers. And you just, why would you want to get rid of that spear? First of all, the spear's not going to do you anything, but don't tell that person that. But they might have been a lot stronger than I was, so that's okay. So here you go. You're looking everywhere. That little ant cuts your trail. Oh, you boy, I'm telling you, I'm in a good mood. That's why I didn't get it. Kind of like that. Now the issue is that's exaggeration, obviously. But if you are brought up like that, you'll have a tendency to carry a cane with you from time to time.
Go home.
You might need to lean on something for a while, and you just bring a cane just to lean on, just in case anybody's in your way. And you engage naturally and normally, sweepingly, with very much kindness.
can't breathe.
It's okay. Nobody gets sick in here because of laughing. So the issue is being okay with you and making a place for you, and then making a place in you that it's okay that you make some adjustments. And you know how difficult those adjustments are? They are exceedingly difficult. That's why there aren't many sages walking around the streets. But there are many people who call themselves sages who have great difficulty with exactly what you're dealing with.
So when
And I don't mean, I hate to say this out loud, kind of a Western sage. I don't know who to say. See what I mean?
no,
No?
I got lost.
Miserable side.
So when
You
we're
obviously
talking
have an
with
attitude
people-
towards the way you function that is really supportive. You support unconsciously the way you function. And it's worked for you. Why would you want to get rid of something that you believe works for you? Unconsciously.
Well, we all believe that. don't we?
Yeah, why would you want to get rid of something? See the difficulty? Because you can't allow yourself, or can you, to engage with something, with a situation, and say, you know what? You say this, and instantly you come up and you say, you know what? I don't agree with what I just said.
But that's why it's difficult with people as opposed to on your own, because you're defensive with
On your own-
people,
on
and
your
you
own
can
it's
watch-
easy.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
everyone.
it's not easy.
But for some people, it's easy. For other people, they just have a nice, interesting dialogue with themselves. Is it easy? No.
No.
Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And then they have medication. It's not a hassle. Just do what you can. So the trick is, if you could think of this, there's no perfection. There's attempt to engage and be the best you can every time. Now, I remember one person said to me one time, I have power in me and I can transmit energy. I said, how's your personality? No, I didn't say that. But I wanted to say that. I desperately did. But that would not have been fair. And here's why it wouldn't have been fair. This person happened to have a lot of energy. And everything in them, every small aspect of their personality may have been there for them to overcome, so they could help each and every person who had similar personalities to soften down their personality. And I have been helped this way by and I know this to be true, another person with a similar personality to mine, hard to believe, but nonetheless true, softened down an aspect of them, and I felt it in my being, and it affected me. And I was grateful for it tremendously. And am to this day. And I will continue to be so. Do I need to know who that was? No, I don't. But boy, it was clear. Now, they may not have worked through some of this stuff, and they don't want to. But one day, if that's part of their engagement with this plane, kind of their purpose in life, unknown to them, they may work through something that helps scads of people. And that would be truly helpful. But guess where we need our real help? In our emotional personality structures. And in that link up, in that intellectual process. Because boy, we can feed our emotions just by being angry intellectually at somebody. So, is it disrespectful? Well, it's personally disrespectful. You're disrespecting yourself as an able spiritual being. And you're locked into energy that is tremendously wonderful. But you use that energy for the purpose of engaging with life. This is natural and normal in our world. This is not a negative thing. This is what we're meant to do. At the same time, we're meant to try and learn how to soften it over. Does that make you sense? Now, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, so both hands went up at the same time. Whose is more important? Let me try this one first, and then we'll go on with the next
It's
one.
probably a shorter one. Maybe that helps. I don't know.
Maybe that may not be true. Might be true.
I'm wondering, I imagine it's throat related, that there's a lot of our energy in the back of the neck and above the shoulder here.
Pretty throat related. Yeah.
And there's a lot of pain and discomfort that I've been having there today, and I've been doing different balancing kinds
And
of
you
things.
remember this old Open your hands first.
I was opening the hands first.
Okay, then take them, drop them down, push it out. Take it, drop it out, and do it without touching and do it with touching. And when you touch, you pull hard. Pull it off the skin. And it will start pulling from your neck. You should feel the emotion right off the body there. No?
Feel the emotion?
Yeah, it'll feel like almost like there's a space there of some kind.
It's kind of heat and cool at the same time.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So that's one way to work.
Okay, one way to do it, and do the pump. It will be very helpful.
And you do the pump more farther out off the body to try to take it.
Wherever your mind will travel.
Yeah.
You can do it like that, or you can do it out here about a foot. About a foot will get it. And remember, you're dealing with this. You're dealing with this. Energy comes up through here, through the emotional dispositional structure, and then comes up. Okay? So you're still dealing with emotion. And you can almost feel that pressure. Positional pressure. It's all unconscious. If you soften down even more, you can feel it here, and if you follow it down, it tracks it right to the solar plexus. And a small little place trying to open right here through the heart center, through the heart area. That's where the gonad center is going up. So try and think behind you, above the head and behind you as well. That maybe help you. Drop it all the way down. You notice it? There should be heat
Yeah.
all over. So it's
Would it
trying,
make sense to be focusing on the other side more?
just be aware above the head, behind you. It will, if you're behind on both sides, it'll shift across from one side to the other. Okay? Okay, yeah.
I was just wondering, a few minutes ago when you were using the spear to get an ant, and there
No,
was,
the ant was in the way and I was...
and what might be
Saber-tooth
mistaken as laughing at somebody who you were talking to, there was a really big reaction, laugh of recognition, because I thought you were talking about me, not Natalie.
Well,
So,
good thing no one else felt that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
but what was actually happening there to make a really big reaction like that?
Response?
Yeah.
Well, because we all have the natures of engaging with and protecting our personality, way of engaging with life.
But were you using, was it because of the throat center, or was it just because we're
Well,
sharing a solar plexus laugh?
I'm just sharing a small little tiny thing. The throat center comes on a wee little bit, brow comes on a wee little bit, the neck and the back comes on a little bit, and their root center is on like crazy, and the solar plexus. And so, welcome to the normal world. So when that comes on, what it tries to do is reshape a bit. Naturally have a reaction. The laughing is an important piece to discharge the laughing, the reaction. Otherwise, you hold the reaction even stronger than you needed to hold it before. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it struck me as weird that people thought
Well, I thought.
you thought. When
I'm
it
sorry,
actually,
I should be back here and I'd be way up there. Yeah.
I just recognized that I was laughing at what you were saying about somebody else, but it was really me doing that.
Yeah, it was a natural reaction. You know, some of us laugh, some of us don't. Some of us can't find a laugh in us
Right.
under that kind of pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's legitimate and really truly normal. That is not negative whatsoever, although we might find that kind of negative. It's not really. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope somebody got something out of this, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.